I heard something was coming out the door, and I thought, what's happened to Dave? He's been attacked by our weasel.
That's hilarious. Yeah, no, I might have cursed.
Okay.
Might have cursed. I brought my good tripod, and I left the attachment for it to attach to the camera on my desk.
That's always a help, isn't it, eh?
But I always have backups, and I have a lot of ingenuity.
Oh, yeah, that's you've had to develop that over the years. Yes, I understand that.
I'm sure you had to improvise a few times.
Oh, a few.
Yeah. Tell me about a time in it you had to improvise.
On radio, this was one time. Jack Delmonico, bless his heart. He's from here. Went to Toronto and in the media and newspaper and businesses like that. He's public relations. He owns a Toronto Maple Leaf baseball club, and he just passed away a couple of years ago. He's in our North Bay Sports Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it was just a year ago he passed away.
Yeah. He used to, curmudgeon. Yeah. Oh, God. He used to come, when we were doing trapper games, he used to come on and visit us sometimes, because he's living in Toronto, and some of the trapper games when they're in the POHA were in and around Toronto, Ajax and right. Seneca College and all that sort of crap. And I think this one was a broadcast in Seneca College. And back then, in the 70s and 80s, it was really difficult. You had to get your line put in by CP or CN, somebody like that. Then you had to get there and you had to check it out and put your equipment on. It was really difficult, time-consuming, especially for somebody who's clumsy with equipment and all that stuff like I have been all my life. So we get to Seneca, and you go to the place where you're supposed to broadcast from, and there's supposed to be a thing put in by Bell. Bell had to put the line in, and then you had to check it through CP or CN to North Bay. Oh, we couldn't find anything. Gord Salmon was doing the game with me, and Gord, bless his heart too, was as clumsy technically as I am. So we're muddling around trying to find where the line had been put in, and we couldn't. It was just a simple thing on a wall, you know. Anyway, we couldn't find it. It hadn't been put in. Simply put, it had not been put in. So we were screwed. We couldn't broadcast the hockey game. So Jack Delmonico comes along to see. He wanted to see. He knew Gord and he knows me and blah blah blah. He wants to come and visit while we're doing a hockey game, so and so forth. So he says, "Oh, all right." He goes down. I mean, he could charm his way into anything when he really felt like it. Went down at the corner of the rink. There was where the Zamboni was. There was a public telephone. He dismantled the public telephone. We hooked our equipment up to it and broadcast from it.
No kidding.
That's the most difficult one. We've had others. It was a crapshoot back then whether you're ever going to get on the air, because most of your games were on the weekends, and the CP guy was off weekends, so we'd finish at 4:30. So you had to be in the arena at 4:30 for an 8 o'clock game. All right? In order to get through, so he could do the patchwork at his office, patch through to North Bay. And we had more trouble that way than,
It's come a long way, eh?
Oh.
Now people do live streams from their hands.
Yeah, it's just, and even when I was doing the Centennial Games, we had after the first or second year we were in, they devised a system where one person was going to be in charge of putting lines into all the arenas. And they'd all be set up perfect. And it worked. It really worked. You paid your share, the station paid its share of whatever. Rather than each station getting a line installed, which is what they used to do. So, yeah. And so technically it's, and then of course the equipment-wise, there's just no comparison. I used to lug around 40 or 50 pounds worth of equipment just to broadcast a hockey game. And then after the second year of the Centennials or something, they got a little box like this. You know, they screamed about the expense, but you know, it's a case of, and it, as far as I know, it was still in existence and being used a few years ago. So
No kidding.
yeah. Well, it's good. You just plug all your equipment into it and hook it into the line. You still have the same line situation and hook it into the line. Plug your equipment into it. It was like this. Whereas before there was two great big boxes and other stuff, and oh my goodness. Anyway.
People don't know how good they have it right now.
No, they don't. I mean, there's more in one of these phones than there used to be in a whole room of technical
Than they
equipment.
used to do the space shuttle. They were like, the technology is just crazy.
Oh, it is. It is.
Yeah.
But Dave, you come to rely on it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
they-
if something goes wrong, you're up the creek.
Yeah, yeah. You have to have a bunch of redundancies still, but
I don't have one of those phones. I just don't. We have a landline and
works, eh?
and a remote line, some sort of a thing that works. I don't know. But it seems anything I touch technically, something immediately goes wrong with it. I think it's something in my aura. If everybody's got an aura, I've got an aura
I
that
hope my
says.
camera doesn't break.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if it did. I have an awful time with the computer. Oh, just an awful time. All this stuff pops up, and I've got a slight tremor from age and all that sort of stuff. So nothing serious.
The heroin addiction, right?
You smart ass. Yeah, don't just speak to yourself there. No, I've got to wear a glove to do anything serious on the if I wanted to push something up, because the tremor screws up the readings that the machine gets. So if I put the glove on, then I'm able to push something without 10 other things coming up.
Well, maybe you got a superpower.
Yeah, it's a
Just don't know what it is
Oh,
yet.
I just don't know what it is. No, I'll never find out now, Dave. Never find out.
Well, a superpower of interviewing, that's for sure. Weren't you just given an award?
Yeah, it was the Queen's Jubilee pin, which is really nice. It was a complete and utter surprise. I don't follow things the way I used to, so I had never even heard of it. I didn't. But of course, you expect something special because Canada always does, and I've been fortunate to get Queen's Medal and all that sort of stuff. So it was really quite nice, and Brent Piggott nominated me, and it was nice.
I guess so.
Yeah. The interviewing thing, I just came. I mean, I just started to do them, and it was way back, and I was doing stuff on television in Kingston back in 1956.
Can you remember your first show?
No. I was radio. And then they said, well, you're doing radio and you've got to be in at 11 o'clock at night, so we want you to do the night television thing. So I did that for 18 months before I was transferred up here. But I don't... I mean, for example, I did an interview with Jack Dempsey down there. And one of the early ones, nothing magnificent, 6 minutes on television, whatever the heck it was. But and we likely did something for radio as well with him, but because he was in, and it's amazing what you could get. This was professional wrestling, eh? And they bring in the wrestlers, and quite often they would have a celebrity referee, and Jack Dempsey was a referee in matches in Kingston. And I mean, Gene Kaniski came in there. I did Kaniski too. But anyway. Dempsey, for a big man, he was a big man. No wonder he was the heavyweight boxing champion. But he almost walked on his toes. It was just
He'd be light on his feet.
light on his feet. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
couldn't believe it when I saw him move. And Kaniski, who was a villain from Winnipeg, I believe, a headliner at the time, And I recall going down the hall. He did the interview, and we were walking him out. And I recall the phone ring, and this switchboard saying it's for Mr. Koniski. So he looked at me, so I took the phone. And he said, I want to speak to Koniski. And I hate Koniski. I want to speak to him. So I said, this guy doesn't like you. He wants to speak. So Koniski picked it up. And the guy was, I hate you. You're the worst wrestler, blah, 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 blah. And before the conversation was over, Koniski had him as his #1 fan. He was going to be at the show that night and all that sort of stuff. That always stuck in my mind for some reason, and that's 1957 approximately.
Wow.
It's amazing what little things stick in your head.
Well, when you see somebody with that type of footwork, really, right?
Yeah.
It does.
Yes.
You know, you can turn you learn you can turn things if you just engage with somebody.
Yeah.
No matter how angry they are.
Yeah.
They just want to be heard, usually.
Yeah.
That's like I've had a couple phone calls like that.
I can imagine you would, because you don't pull punches when you write stuff. But society's too far that way, David. It's just.
I know they get very angry,
and people are angry. This person who accosted Freeland, I mean, and then you hear the soundtrack.
Well, it was a planned stunt.
And then you take a look at him. He's wearing an undershirt and he's got a beard. And I mean, how about playing to stereotypes?
Yeah, and that's every time he's on video, that's what he wears. He just did that as a stunt. Yeah, no.
Yeah, but it's hurtful to the to the recipient of that so-called stunt.
Oh yeah, but that's what he wants to do. He wants to look like he wants to project being a bully, and to put that onto her. And they planned to get there. They were looking for her. They were set up so that they would record it, and then they used that to promote whatever their
Oh my God! I didn't know that. I thought it was spontaneous.
It wasn't spontaneous. No, there's a video of them going out into the parking lot laughing about it. Oh, isn't that great timing? I couldn't believe that we found her so fast. You know.
Oh yeah, but the poor victim. I mean,
they don't care. Yeah, they're just trying to get it for clicks and stuff like that.
Is he a broadcaster or something?
No, he's an anti.
Oh.
Free man, looking. There's a group that he's involved with that say that they're sovereigntists. You ever hear of them? Sovereign citizens?
Not really.
Yeah, they're a bunch of nutbars that think that nobody can tell them what to do because they're citizens of the universe.
Oh, okay.
No government, no nothing, and that's his deal.
Yeah.
So he's just doing his shtick. And
there's too many. I'm sorry. It's sad that it's up here. I know it's in the States. It's rampant in the States.
Well, Alberta isn't really up here, is it?
Well, that's unfair. I mean, there are a lot of great people in Alberta, but there's as you call them, nut bars. It's certain parts of the country, I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. But Alberta is the home of the insurrectionist groups, the very Christian fundamentalists that want to separate from Ontario just as bad as the Quebecois.
Yeah.
And he's part of that.
Okay.
Except that he doesn't want any government.
I'll see how long you survive.
These people.
I mean, you hate the government, and you hate your council, and you hate this, you hate that, but without them, what are you going to have? You're going to have people running around with guns, knives, and clubs, belting anybody they feel like, which they do now, but at least now they get punished. And if you don't have government, you don't have police. If you don't have police, you don't have a fire department.
Yeah.
And you don't need the police, and you don't need the fire department until you have a fire or somebody chases you or whatever. I mean, it's just absolutely
the morning
idiocy.
After anarchy, they're going to have a meeting and form a government. Because anarchy was only good for the powerful and the rich and the ones that can hire an army.
Oh.
And those usually install government. So it's just a circle. They don't realize that we've come this far because we've gone down those roads. You need a government. Now, there's things you can do to fine-tune government, but yeah, I agree.
Are you sorry you decided not to run?
No, I'm happy I did.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good, because you'd be frustrated in a month.
Oh, For sure. For sure.
It's just the way things are. You've got to be able to accept certain things and the way certain things are done, and you can make work to change some of those things that you don't like. But as they say, Rome wasn't built in a day, and I don't think patience is your long suit.
Well, the long-term game would have had to start earlier in this. I don't have the time to do the changes that would be necessary. In patience, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
I would have been investigated every month for something I said.
Yeah. Well, oh, you'd learned. I mean, you're not stupid, so you'd learned. You'd have towed the line pretty much until something happened that really.
I probably would have had some strategy around it. That's what I wanted to. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about. I know I predicted this might be the fewest number of candidates ever, but it turns out it might be the most. Do you ever remember any more than 30?
No, they were generally in the mid to upper 20s.
Yeah, so 29 is. Could it be a record?
Oh, I have no idea. I just remember the years I was interested in it.
Was there ever that many who ran when you ran?
I think there was a 29, but I could be wrong. I didn't worry about that too much.
How many years were you on council?
9, three-year terms.
Yeah.
Interesting. Really, I went in a babe in the woods, very naive. I came out, still a babe in the woods, not quite as naive as I. But I found it really a rewarding 9 years, for most of the 9 years. The last 3 were iffy, because we had people that were completely unreasonable as far as they didn't like anything. Or the tax group that was formed, they didn't like anything. No matter what Jack at the council did, it was automatically wrong. Well, Al ran into that with a couple of individuals, not a client group, but a couple of individuals. And no matter what you did, it was wrong. If you decided to spend $5, well, you should have spent 3, or you should have spent 10. Usually the 3.
Interesting how there was a lot of criticism about the waterfront purchase, rail lands purchase, right? But it turns out
not on council, there wasn't. I mean, there was discussion, but it was Jack's project. Jack Burrows, the mayor, his project, and from my memory, which is not that great sometimes, I felt that council was behind him. Sure, we asked questions. Sure, we imposed restrictions. Blah 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 blah. But basically, everybody was with it.
I was more thinking about after when people were running.
Yes, and we had a tax, put on your tax bill. This is much. I mean, that's petty. That's pathetic. That's small-minded. But that's what was done.
Seems like that.
And yet everybody now, well, the waterfront. Well, we got this, we got that, we got blah 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 blah. But they seem to forget.
Well, some of the same people like to go to ribbon cuttings down there.
Yeah, but no.
Do you think this election will get nasty with the mayoral race or the councillor race? It's already gotten a little bit punky, eh?
I don't want to get involved in that.
I don't blame you.
To tell you the truth, I really don't, because I've got some strong views, and I just would prefer just to let them go.
Yeah.
I hope it's a reasonable. I mean, you shouldn't have asked that.
So you're not on Facebook?
No.
This week, Thursday, Mayor Al McDonald posted a picture of about 30, 40 people that he hosted at his place on Trout Lake.
Oh, yeah.
And lined them up on the dock.
Okay.
And took a picture. And I commented underneath it. And it was a group that was involved with Canador, and Al always puts in all the great stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
that's part of what the mayor's job is.
So my comment underneath was, I guess texting from your dock isn't such a bad thing, eh? He loved it.
Yeah. I think that not that, but what triggered it was a misstep. I really think it was a misstep.
Yeah.
But that. We'll see how that plays out. But anyway, I hope it's reasonable. I mean, the only way you get stuff done, David, in my estimation, is sitting down and listening to people, whether it's the other counselors, whether it's citizens or whatever. You don't get anywhere by just slamming without knowing what you're slamming. That's one of my earliest memories of Anthony Rhoda, because that's his raison d'être as far as politics is concerned, is compromise, to listen to people and come to an agreement. That's what it's all about. And that the first time when he and I were elected to council the same election, and that's it. When we talked, and that was his belief, and that's what he tried to put in as a city councilor, and that's the way he tries to do his job as a politician, and he gets a lot more done than people who rant and roar and rage and all that stuff, But a lot of people don't understand that. They think you've got to shout and roar and call people names in order to get anything done. Well, you don't. You really don't. All you do, if Joe didn't want to listen to you to begin with, you start yelling at him, Joe's not going to listen to you. He's going to get his back up even further and retreat even further. Whereas if you approach him in a reasonable way and say, Joe, let's sit down. Let's talk about this. Let's see. Well, where are you coming from with this? And Joe says this, that, and the other thing. And the other guy says, yeah, but how about looking at it this way? And you get people to say, okay, I don't agree with you 100%, but I'm willing to go along with it for 50%, whatever. And you get things done by jumping around and stamping your feet and thumping your desk. What are you going to get done? Except some newspaper reporter or television reporter will have it up and you'll get a bunch of Twitter shots, or whatever they call them. So, I never worked that way. Never believed in doing that. Although sometimes I felt like it. But you don't. You sit down and you try and listen.
Had I run for council, my platform would have been to be the centrist mediator, because that's what they lack.
Yeah, but it's near. I mean, you talk about dysfunctional council. Was it West Nipissing? That was just absolutely, and that's because people were being childish.
Yeah.
If only one or even two of that group of people had been reasonable on their stand. I don't know what their stances were. I have no idea. Just reasonable and done what, as I said, Anthony likes to do and I like to do, is sit down and talk something over. They could have gotten some stuff done. And I fault the provincial government for not stepping in a lot earlier than they did. But however.
Well, 4 of the people that were standing their ground and being part of that split are running this time. So they got out altogether.
Yeah, that's a wide thing. And to have an empty spot on your council for almost, I guess, 2 years or whatever it was, if they ever did replace it, because they couldn't decide how to replace it. Now that to me is plain, ordinary idiocy. I mean, It's simple. Your next guy in the election, put him in if he's interested. If he's not interested, then you look at something else, maybe.
It's easy.
Easy, God.
I was surprised that the ministry had a deadline with no consequences of not meeting it.
Yeah.
However. Yeah. Well,
that's that 9 years was really really something special in my life. Mm-hmm. And 6 or 7 it was special in the city's life because there was so many challenges. And just look at the borough's memorial plaque in front of the museum, and that lays it all out. I don't want to go into it all again now. Mm-hmm. But there were more challenges than any council has faced since, except COVID is a whole separate ballgame. and Jack took us through them, and we got things done. Anyway, to me that was very well. But also, I've been purging and going through stuff and not realizing, you get these little notes from people. Thank you for helping us solve this problem, or helping us work out the solution for this problem, or whatever the heck it was. And that's really what a city councillor is all about. Sure, you set the tax rate, and you do this and you do that, and so on and so forth. But a lot of it is the little small stuff.
Advocating for people.
Yeah, because they not necessarily advocating, but helping solve their problems. I'm not a strong supporter, because advocating is
probably the wrong word.
Is agenda, and I
advocating on their behalf to solve a problem. It was what I thought.
That's entirely reasonable. But people with agendas who run for council, I say, okay, that's great. They're going to push that agenda, but that agenda is only 1/25 of what we're going to be handling on council. Now, how are you going to look at the other items that you've got to deal with? So I don't have any agendas. That's one thing I was really proud of. I work for things, and I worked against things, whatever. But I didn't go into council with a pre-order. I'm going to do that, I'm going to do the other thing. I never promised anything. All I basically promised was that I'd work hard, that I would listen, and I forget what the heck the others were. There was 2 or 3 other minor things. What is it I've got here? Work with people to solve problems, and the belief that compromise is not a dirty word. I believe in working with people rather than against ideas. Because that's what I said to first L candidates met. And I still believe it. I used it all the way through my 3 terms. Strongly believe that, and that's the way I operated, or tried to operate.
Well, from what I observed, that's what I saw in you.
Yep, sometimes it worked, but that's the way I tried to operate, and I think we got a lot of stuff done. I'm really proud of those 3 terms, and I'm proud of having worked with Jack and worked with all the other people on council. We got a lot of stuff done, and there was some push and shove. Now, not on my part, but there was some push and shove on those councils. So people didn't like each other very much. I'm not going to name any names, but that's, But Jack kept them under control. In fact, on the whole 9 years, Jack never, he disciplined, to my knowledge, I think it was 2 councillors. And that's pretty damn good when you come right down to it, And he never told anybody what to do.
What type of discipline?
I don't know. That's none of my business. He took councillors aside, to my knowledge, to reprimand them on 2 occasions.
He called me on the carpet once.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're the guy. You delight in being called on the carpet. Isn't that part of what you do when you write? You write with you get your points across, but if you can ruffle a couple of feathers along the way, that's.
Yeah. Well, you want to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
You want them to feel it.
And
think about it.
Yeah. But you like stirring the pot.
Yeah, well, I thought I had that role. That was the role. I believe I was born into that role.
Yeah. Well, George Marousas, in a sense, was born into that role on council. He liked stirring pots because he would think out of the box, and then if he'd see something going some way, he'd say, "Oh," because George has a sense of humor. And he liked just stirring the pot up. Let's see what happens if I do this or do that.
He's mischievous.
Yes, absolutely. So.
Yeah, so he's not running, and
it's unfortunate, but he more than paid his dues. I didn't agree with everything he did. But that doesn't matter a hoot in hell.
Yeah.
Because I consider George a friend and we get along well, even though we don't agree on everything. You know, we agree on a lot, though.
Yeah.
However, yeah,
So
that
I
was.
forgot to mention when we started here. I wanted to set the stage. We're here and the cars go by because Cedar Heights here
Yeah.
is getting a new pavement eventually. Is that like a gift from the city for you
No.
right before you moved?
No, it's still an experiment. I happened to be on council when it was really in bad shape, and it costs a lot of money to pave a street.
I rode the bus to Canadore a million times in 86, 87, 88 going down here before College Drive was put in.
Yeah.
And it was a I think I still have a vertebrae that's pinched from the back of the bus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, experiment of some sort?
Yeah. It was reusing asphalt.
Yeah.
It was Brian Baker's idea, I think, and we tried it. And frankly, I won't say it doesn't work, because it works. It gives you but it doesn't last. And they're continuing to do it that way, I understand. I get for financial reasons, and but they do have to do it more often than they would have to do if they paved it
pretty well like everything nowadays.
Yeah,
it's cheaper, but you got to buy it 10 times more.
Yeah. But everything costs so much now too. That just
you got to reuse it. You got to try.
Yeah. You got to make every effort, and councils do. They make every effort. People think the council goes in there to spend the taxpayers' money. They don't. They go in there to maintain your city services. And I'll tell you, some of these bitchers and complainers would be the first to complain if they had a pothole on their street, or their electric light, their street light wasn't working, or whatever. But all that costs money, and some councils decide they're going to let that go to rack and ruin, and then the next council has to pick up the slack, and it's however, never-ending problem. But
I think you described the Stan years.
In a sense, yeah, it was strictly no tax increase, and you pay for that. You really pay for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you skip anything on your house for 5 years, you find out what it's like.
Absolutely, same thing. But the whole situation is, and I recently tried to get, I did an interview with Vic. I tried to get him, and he agrees to a degree, I think. It's an unhealthy situation when the only real steady financial support a city has, or a town, is the tax base. If you can't guarantee you're getting a certain amount of support from the provincial government or the federal government, because we're creatures of the province, you've got to rely on the tax base, and the tax base is what gets hit. Now, if you've got, and we've been fortunate, say what you like about Vic, I'll tell you, he's brought money and grants and all that into the city on an unprecedented level. Although Smith did pretty well too, but Vic's in a whole different position, and he's more than paid his dues in that regard, in my respect, in my opinion.
I would agree with that.
But you're not going to always have a member who's pretty high up in the echelon of the party. Sometimes you're going to be in opposition, and then things trickle. You don't.
The taps get turned off.
The taps are turned off. Absolutely, you can't. And it's a crude way to put it. You can't get to the trough, and that's bad. We should have a system somehow, and I'm not the one to decide it because I don't have the knowledge. But anybody who thinks about it knows that there's got to be a better way than making a city live only on the taxpayer's back. There's got to be a better way. Just like there's got to be a better way than first past the post. But what is it? There's got to be a better form of government than democracy. Because, as Winston Churchill said, democracy is the worst form of government except for everything else that's been tried. That's a bad quote, but that's the general idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
yeah, we got to come up with better options.
better options, and people aren't thinking that. All that people are nowadays are wanting to do is scream and yell at each other.
Well, there's this Fair Vote Canada thing where they talk about the proportional voting and these other options, and I once in a while get into it and start reading what they're saying, and they have some good ideas, but unfortunately what it is that the government in power would lose power. The party in power would lose power, and whenever one of these are implemented, these
How
other
do you mean?
ideas. Well,
oh, you mean because the government gets in now with 40% of the popular vote? Is that what you're saying?
well, it's working for them, so why would they want to change it? So the ones in power that could change things are in power because of the old system, and they think it would be risky. I can only assume that's why the Liberals didn't fulfill their promise to do something federally.
They might have, but I mean, the thing is, you've got to make whatever system you get understandable to the average Joe.
Yeah.
And the things that they come up with, this, that, and the other thing, I look at them and I say, do I really understand that? And I don't know whether I do or not.
Yeah, the terminology is confusing sometimes.
And the method, the system, whatever. I mean, you're going to get rid of this. Number one vote's gone, and then you count up the twos and the threes and whatever.
Yeah, that's the rank system.
Yeah, it makes some form of sense, but you've got to try and explain it to the average citizen so that he knows what he's voting for and how he's got to understand what his votes mean when he puts his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. I don't know.
No, you're right. We need a better system, better explained, and it's still a work in progress.
Yeah. Well, I guess government always will be, as long as it's not upset the way it's been upset in the States.
Yeah. That's a pretty good example of the worst form of democracy.
And it's amazing what the impact one person can have, negative impact one person can have. I mean, you talk about your Hitlers and Tojos and all the rest of them, and dictators and Hussein and so on and so forth. But what's going on is just as bad. Was just as bad, and he's done just as many horrendous things. This latest business about the documents, it boggles the mind. Number one, how would he ever get them out of the White House? Do they not have any system of governance on their valuable papers? That a man, whether he's president or not, can walk out with all these papers, these boxes of papers, and then show them to God knows who, from God knows what country.
Pretty sloppy, eh?
The fact he got away with it is you begin to wonder. I mean, he's just a complete aberration, but Hitler was an aberration too. But Hitler got away with a lot of stuff. He also made the trains run on time.
Yeah.
And improved the roads. So while he was a complete monster, he did some things. I can't say that for the former president. Not that I'm comparing the two. I'm just that was a bad analogy because it's been compared before, and it's a completely bad analogy. I just wanted to say some of the.
Well, it stirs up those fears of the past, right?
Oh,
right. It does stir.
But it's in the present, Dave.
Yeah, I know.
It's in the present.
Well, that's
and
why
it could be in the future. And that's what makes it so utterly ridiculous. That a person with so many flaws can have so many people slavishly following every word he says. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, let's not talk about that anymore. It's upsetting. It's nothing we can do about it.
My fall edition of the magazine is going to have a little bit of a spread on past councils and mixed in with current council candidate ads.
All right.
So I got a few photos of some past councils,
Okay.
50s and 60s and 70s and such.
Right.
Is there a council that, obviously Merle Dickerson is the most infamous of all, but talk about some of the other councils from the 60s and 70s is just sort of any memories you have of those councillors and mayors. Like
That's difficult because
Bruce Goulet like?
Bruce Goulet was a nice man.
Okay.
He was a nice man. I mean, I knew little about Bruce as a politician. I met Bruce running Bruce Office Supply, and he sponsored a fastball team in the GMFA. That's how I got to know Bruce. And he was the Golden Mile, and that, more power to him. He had that idea, because it was a wilderness down there. And we've got to do something about that. I always thought well of Bruce. He was not charismatic in any way, shape, or form. Dickerson was charismatic. No, Bruce was just a nice person who believed strongly in the community. He was a small businessman, and he put his money where his mouth was, and ran for council, was the mayor, and just a nice person. I didn't pay that much attention to council, but I was all engrossed in all this sports stuff. Football and hockey and the ball and softball and so on and so forth, and radio and music, and this. Council was the very last thing I was interested in. I knew people on council. I met Cease Hewitt, who used to run, who was one of the general managers of CKGN Television, one of the originals.
Cecily Hewitt, yeah.
Always rated as a very fine gentleman. Shock of white hair. Nice man too. Always a gentleman. And he became mayor as well. But I don't know how we enjoyed his tenure with Bruce McLeod and CKGN Television back in the 50s. I have no idea. But it wouldn't be his cup of tea, I wouldn't think. Dickerson, I knew Dickerson not very well, of course, but very colorful ideas. Riding the dog sleds through the lobby of the King Edward Hotel in Toronto and that sort of stuff. And he questioned the quotation marks shady he happened to be in getting votes. He would draw more conventions to the city of North Bay in his tenure than any other mayor has done before or since. Every time you turned around, the convention of the XYZs or the ABCs or the 1-2-3s was here. You know, because that was in the late 50s and the 60s. Because that's every time I looked around, and I didn't pay any attention to them, of course, but they were there. Whatever.
Businessman, marketer.
Yeah, a hustler.
A
hustler for votes and everything else. I knew Dick Donnelly. In fact, he was a neighbor of ours when we were on Martin Street. Used to walk his dog regularly.
What was he like?
I've heard people say he was the best lawyer and one of the best lawyers the city ever had. A criminal lawyer. And he brought some of that to the council seat. He was deputy mayor, he was budget chief, but he was a staunch defender of the city. A staunch defender of the city. I recall watching on television, he'd get, some guy would come to speak to council, And he'd be trying to get council to buy something or do something or support something. And Donnelly was allowed to stand. He has had some back problems, so you don't see your councillors stand. They don't. They sit when they're doing their things. They sit. Donnelly was allowed to stand because of his condition. And he would stand up and excoriate the guy. He would shrivel him down. You could tell he was a tremendous lawyer because of the way he could handle words and people. And just, how dare you come here and try and sell us this phony bowl of goods or whatever the hell it was. I don't know. I recall, and a lot of other people remember that too with him. He was very supportive of the city and defensive and didn't want the city to get taken down the garden path by anybody.
Good guy to have on your team.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I had one run-in with him, which I don't want to talk about, and other people had but he would never directly apologize, but he would apologize in another way. I'll tell you this story. I think it's Bud Berry tells it on a podcast I did with Bud.
Okay.
About Dickerson impugned Bud's honesty just by a glance. Bud found his wallet and on the street and took it into his office and gave it to him. And Dickerson opened up the wallet and riffled through the money, and he said, I see the money's all here too. Bud did not take that nicely. And Dickerson knew it was not the right thing to say. So sometime later, and Bud had done work with the police, photography, forensic work with the police and with the late Vic McClanahan. And he was being called as a witness. And the judge goes to swear Bud in, and Donnelly steps up and says, it won't be necessary. This man's the most honest man I've ever met. So that was his way to apologize to Bud for that remark that he never should have made.
Right.
I mean, I don't think he meant it that way necessarily, that he thinks, oh, Bud, you didn't take any of my money. I'm surprised. I don't think he meant it. He just meant, oh, geez, my money's here, because the wallet was found somewhere and somebody else could have found it. But anyway, it's funny. It's funny,
Bud's a proud guy. Egos are what they are.
Oh, yeah, but he just took it that way, and maybe that's the way Donnelly meant it. Who knows? I don't know. Nobody will ever know. But yeah, he was a strong supporter of the city. And your councillors, your councillors and your mayors have got to be that way. They've got to support the city and fight for the city. And your MPs and MPPs have to do the same thing. That's part of their job. However.
Do you remember when the 50th anniversary of the city's incorporation took place? I think it was August. What was that?
50th would be 20, 25, 50, 75.
1975.
Yeah.
Isn't that when that guy escaped the jail?
Kelly?
Yeah. It was during the celebrations? Could have been.
I heard
that the other day and I want to double check it.
Could have been. I'm not one to check for dates or times. But that would be the 50th celebration of the city would be 1975, because the 75th was 2000, and the 100th is 2025.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the city will have a lot of good things planned. Hopefully, they do have a good number of good things planned.
Are you going to come back for it?
Oh. Anyway, I mean, I grew up in Kingston, eh? I mean, what, 100 years? That's drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
I mean, they were populated down there in the 1700s.
Yeah.
And the buildings, some of them are still standing, I think. limestone stuff and all that.
North Bay's pretty young city.
It's a
really.
young city. But
I think the Nugget missed its 100th anniversary. They've lost track of it when I was there.
Oh.
All of a sudden it was gone, and it was like, you fools.
when it was in Cobalt, counting that time.
Well, I think they were counting the time when it was first named the North Bay Nugget, and when it came from Cobalt and settled here. I'm not sure, but I think it was about 7 years ago or so. Anyways, it came and went, and I remember everybody going, could have done something with that. But you can't celebrate every birthday.
Well, but 100 something special.
Yeah.
But granted, the way the newspaper business is going, it's not surprising that
you got to celebrate every year.
Yeah, celebrate every year you exist. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's the way things go. However.
Well, you got a beautiful place up here. You must have enjoyed the gardening and all the work you did.
Yeah, when we used to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Yes. And we've got animals, and I had a visitation in when I was my read and smoke in the afternoon. The past I've had we have varying hares around here, and them hop into the barn and say hello and hop out again, and when we had groundhogs, the same thing. Groundhog would come in the barn and say hello and go out, and red squirrels all the time. Just the other day we had a small weasel came up right beside the chair.
Oh yeah.
Looked up at me as if to say, "What are you still here?" And then he came back up and looked a second time. Then he ran out to the front of the barn. They come in looking for mice.
Yeah.
He looked at the front of the barn, looked back at me to say goodbye, and took off. But it's funny, we had 2 weasel broods come through the barn. And they make little peeping noises. And there was 7 or 8 babies. And I never did see the mother. I just heard the babies going peep, 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 all over the barn. Making these little peeping noises. And that's happened twice. I didn't know what it was. The first, what is that noise? And then I see these little creatures running around all over the place. Mom bringing them, well, look, this is a place to come if you want to find some mice. And you don't have to be out in the rain and the wet. You can come in the barn and find mice in here. Whatever. I don't know. Or voles or whatever they're after. But
yeah.
Anyway, we've had red foxes up here. We had a lynx one time. We've had a wolf. We've had bears. A couple of years ago we had a couple of bear cubs and their mother. Tiny little things.
Mm-hmm.
And they ran up at one of our trees in the back and hollering for Mom. Mom, I'm up here. How do I get down? And I think that was 2 years ago, or last year, and I think they came back this spring because there was a bear and a couple of yearlings. So I think they came back and then disappeared again. Thank goodness they disappeared. But
it's nice to live up where the animals feel comfortable,
Yeah.
It's like having a bunch of pets you don't have to feed.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll change. We get lots of birds, and you had the blue jays, and we affiliated. I think we had affiliated here earlier, and all sorts of birds, and yeah, we like it. It's been an interesting almost 30 years, I guess, up here. So, however.
Well, you've had an interesting time in North Bay. You made every minute count, from what I could tell.
Yeah. I had a number of chances to go elsewhere, Toronto, to the States. I basically had an open invitation to go to CKSO in Sudbury, go to the Sioux, wherever. Back to Kingston. But I'm glad I never followed up on any of them. Because I was able to do things after sports, and in sports and after sports, that anywhere else it would have been I never would have gotten on council anywhere else. The people of the city have always treated me very, very well. The kids had a good education. It's a good place to bring up a family. So I have no regrets at all about staying here for my working life and after working life. Yeah, and even getting on the Heritage Committee and that sort of stuff, because you build up some information over the years about the community and the people and what happened and what didn't happen and so on and so forth, and you're able to
institutional knowledge.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. So you develop that over a period of time, and then you build up a reputation in a sense, because when you're here for a while, you can deal with people out of town. For example, in getting interviews and that, and getting people to agree to sit down and talk with you. I came across, when I was purging, I came across a schedule that I used to go to Toronto regularly to interview people. And I had a number of different interviews set up on this one particular trip, and there were 4 different publishers, each with a different book and a different author, like Pierre Burton and Larry Zolf and all this sort of thing. That and you get to know different people and get the contacts, and you're able to reach out and be able to do, like Gordon Sinclair and Fred Davis and people like that from CFRB and so on and so forth. All that sort of stuff you build up by having a reputation in a community and able to work that out in a sense. But in that aspect of it, if you don't do the job, for example, for the publisher, if you don't do the job, if you get a hold of Pierre Burton's secretary, and blah blah blah, this is the book, blah blah, so this is the book, blah blah blah, and if you get out and you screw up that interview, you don't do that interview properly, you don't do it professionally, you don't do it with some sort of knowledge. You walk in, oh, I hear you've written a book, Pierre. You'd be gone. But word gets around. You know, the guy's professional. He does a job. He asks some reasonably interesting questions. He's no brainiac, but he's not stupid either. So the word gets around, and therefore you get, okay, I'll do that interview. The Canadian Club here were very good in getting guests for me, and they wouldn't if a guest came back to them and said, Judas Priest, who's that clown you sent me up to do an interview with? It was a disaster. If you do a workmanlike professional job, and then the word gets around and blah, 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 so on and so forth. It's all, but you've got to do the job. You've got to know what you're doing. You got to work at it, do your research, know what you're talking about or appear to know what you're talking about, and not know too damn much. You've just got to know enough to get by, because your guest is the one that's supposed to know whatever you're talking about, not you, the guest.
Know enough to ask a question.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, it's been fun. I have no regrets.
Well, I got my headline now. No brainiac, but he's not stupid either.
Yeah, well, that's most people, isn't it?
I think so. That's where that's my that's my shtick.
Yeah. You had you have a good way with words, and when you put your mind to it, and in some of your columns, some of them you dash off. But some of the ones when you take a thought to, and you can put a paragraph together that just I meant to mention this to you about a plank. An election plank, platforms and planks. You had an analogy and a whole paragraph on that sort of thing that I laughed, and I thought, how true is that? It was really brilliant writing. So good on you for doing it, not all the time, but occasionally. And that's all you aim for, isn't it?
I think so.
You know? God.
Yeah, there's some dogs.
Oh.
It's hard writing columns every week.
It is. Yeah, I didn't do them every week, or maybe I did. I wrote so many columns over the years. Some of them they're all professional, but some of them you get a turn of phrase and you like that turn of phrase and it works.
Mm-hmm.
That turn of phrase I gave to you earlier. This I believe in working with people rather than against ideas. Now that's not bad.
That's a good one.
That's not bad. That's worth remembering. So what the heck? And sometimes you can throw one in a story or in a column or whatever. But I'm sort of a jack of all. You come up, and I always thought and still think that a person going into the media, into radio, for example, should, okay, you want to be a DJ. Well, God, good on you. But don't only want to be the DJ. Want to do the news. Want to do the sports. Want to do X, Y, Z. Get a backing. Get a grounding in every aspect of it. Then if an opening comes up for something you may, I can do it. But I want to go up the ladder. So you can maybe take that step up the ladder and maybe eventually get to what you really want to do. But you've got to be a generalist. So I had some writing skills. Use that I wrote for just about every weekly newspaper that came through the community. I got paid because radio up here didn't pay a hell of a lot. Neither did television. Certain areas it did, most areas it didn't. So you, as you know, you pick up what you can get. Somebody says, I'd like you to do CBC. They called Al Brennan, the Nugget. I don't want to do it. Call Pete at the radio station. So he called, sure, we'll try it. So I did sports, Northern Ontario sports, for the CBC North, and for other programs for 15 to 17 years. And they paid well. And, I've been purging old copies of the Timmins Press and the stuff from the Sioux and stuff from Kapuskasing and stuff from Sudbury and all that sort of stuff. You've got to blend it all together and make it a weekly thing. And then doing interviews and working with Sid Tompkins, and Sid was let go, unfortunately, landed on his feet at Canadore, which was great. Calls me and says, I want you to teach a class on interviewing. Oh, I couldn't talk in public. I hated talking in public. So Sid says, okay, all right. You have to design the course, you have to do everything in the course, but we want you to do it, so I'll try it. And they paid well too. And I did that for over 15 years. And a lot of good people came through that. People who've been in the business here and elsewhere. Good people. And I enjoyed it, ultimately. I enjoyed it, because I was talking about stuff that I thought I knew something about. It turns out I did. I got some books and textbooks and looked at them and said, well, all right, I know all that. I really don't need a textbook, because I've got it all up here now, not knowing I had it all up here and that I was doing this or not doing that.
Acquired the knowledge.
Yeah. And actually doing it.
Yeah.
Which is the best way to learn.
Hands-on.
Yeah. Hands-on. Unless your hands-on is screwed up, unless you don't do it right.
Well, you need someone to either correct you or guide you.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that and you just learn bad habits, there's no use.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're building a house on a bad foundation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's always been necessary to do several jobs, really, for when you're living up in the north here. A lot of different industries.
Yeah.
Definitely media. I think the Nugget was the best paying one here in town.
Yeah.
For quite a while, anyway. But still, you wouldn't want to be the only breadwinner. if you had a family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who did you work with at the Nugget that you really learned something from?
Well, there was a number of different people that taught me a little bit from what their best things were. I didn't really have, like Arnie, of course, was...
Arnie Heckel?
Watching him go about how his process for writing was, and then watching and reading how he approached his columns, I did learn a little bit off him like that, because he would, and also his, he was a flawed individual, just like all of us.
Yeah.
He wasn't necessarily the best reporter in the world. He had his biases, I think, but he did the job, and he had pride about the job and the craft. He had pride in the craft. So I did enjoy whatever that came from him. It was just that there was a gentleman that had a lot of experience and proud of the work he did when he did a good job. So I did enjoy that. The second time I was with Bruce McCowan. Okay. After he got dispatched from the Sudbury, walked out of Sudbury Star because the mother corporate chewed him up and sped him out. When he came back to the Nugget for a little while there, I was very impressed with his professionalism and humanity, because he had been through it all, and he tried to he climbed that ladder and found out what it was like, and I really enjoyed that. Kathy Tom was a good editor in that she was diligent and professional, and tried her best and came in every day trying to do her best, which is just...
That's all you can ask of anybody.
When you have teammates like that, it gives you a level to strive for on the day. Even if you don't feel like working that day, if the people around you are doing what their regular professional job, you got to buck up, right? And that helps.
Did you work with John R. Hunt?
I didn't have any direct work with John R. like PJ did. He actually had an opportunity to work with him. I talked to him on the phone lots. Yeah. I read his editorials. I was really impressed with his tone and ability in his writing. Like his wordsmithing was, and his way of getting a point across with class and style. I really, that's something to strive for in your writing, is to be entertaining and articulate at the same time. Yeah. Yes. To know what your voice is and to use that voice. So that was how I learned off him, but it was from afar. I didn't get to have a working relationship with him. Okay. I think the photographers I could have learned a lot more off of, but they were going through a rough time all the time and getting shrunk and thrown out. So. And
having to do both report and take pictures too.
Yeah, well, see, that's one of the reasons. That's when I was in college. My thing was I wanted to try everything and to be able to do everything, and that wasn't something they were promoting. They wanted you to specialize in photography or writing after the first year. Okay, I refused. Oh, basically, I knew photography was going to be important to my future, and I knew layout was going to be important to my future, and the writing. I was there to learn writing. Okay. It was the only reason really I went to Canada, is I wanted to learn how to write professionally.
All right. Who taught you?
Don Curry.
Okay.
Was heading the program.
Well known.
Joe Belanger came in after him.
Yes. Okay. Right.
And there was a guy here, Larry. I can't remember his last name for some reason. Larry. He was only here a year, I think, a year and a bit. But he had the fire in him. He had he was an upper level writer. Okay. And I think he ended up writing books and went down to America or something like that. I lost track. But he
ended up writing books, did he? Okay.
I never read his books, but he was a professional writer. Like, he was a real writer.
Yes. Okay. I know
like Joe Belanger was a working man reporter.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
and he was a good grunt that way.
Yeah.
This Larry O'Connor, it was his name, Larry
Okay.
O'Connor, but he had a thing about good writing that I was interested in. I wasn't as interested in reporting part of it. I was interested in
Being
the writing.
a writer, okay.
The reporting was just the nasty part of the job, having to talk to people. Right?
All right. Yeah.
And, you know.
But where's your book then?
I'm writing it one column at a time.
So it's the columns then, right?
Yeah.
That's where you can. All right.
Yeah. And features. I like to write a feature.
Yeah.
If I can, I really enjoy interviewing somebody like yourself, who's been around and has something to offer and has a story to tell. I really like presenting that package with a good feature photo, and some good description of their life and well outlined. I enjoy that.
Yeah.
And it took a long time to figure out, you know, how to do that efficiently. So columns and feature writing is my thing. But yeah, I'm going to write a book. You going to write a book? Did you? You've written some books for Sports Hall of Fame. You helped, right?
Yeah. I edited a book on Mike Rodden.
Right.
Mattawa.
Yep.
Fantastic character, just one of the two most outstanding characters I've ever worked with or met, really, in most respects. And then a couple of Sports Hall of Fame, North Bay Sports Hall of Fame books, bios of the authors, and the second one was, of course, with the story of the Centennials, the only one that's been written so far, and the Canoe Club and the Ski Club that was done by Dave Minden. And junior hockey here over a period of 40 years. So yeah, and I want to do when I leave. I want to do a book on the podcast, the Heritage podcast. I want to do a book on the transcriptions of some of the people I've talked to over the past. Most of whom have passed away, but some of them haven't. I mean, for example, I've got a podcast with Woody talking about how the airbase was saved.
Oh, okay.
And he also includes in one of the other podcasts about his visits with the Queen, you know, and that sort of stuff. And then Murray Leatherdale talking about writing his book From Brûlé to Booth. This was done before the book was finished. And Louise to Caroline Lawrence talking about her life, and there's just been a brand new book written about her. All those people, you know, and a whole bunch of others.
So you have all the guts for a book.
One of Grail's daughters. Yeah, and Tressler, Hartley Tressler, and Bill Steer, and Cup Gunning, all have written books about and on North Bay, and talking to them about that and other things. And other live interviews we did with the mayor and Anthony Rhoda and Mr. Fideli and other people locally about things that happened, and the late Vic McClenahan, for an example, and Bill Church, and Nestor Prisco and George Marousas and all that sort of stuff. What I want to do is try and put that into some sort of a book if I can when I get. However, we'll see.
I asked Nestor, I wanted to do a feature on him, but he was sick the last couple of weeks. So.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
He thinks he'll be over it by September, mid-September. I think he's trying. It's his business, but.
Well, it's he's.
I thought he'd be interesting.
He is, yeah. He is a fountain of knowledge on the city of North Bay, and most specifically on the legal fraternity in the city of North Bay. He's been an immense help to the Heritage Committee, and when we dabbled into the courthouse and all that sort of stuff. A fount of information and willing to impart it too. He has done articles for high-class journals on different aspects of the legal life here. And he's, yeah, he should be doing a book, but longtime sheriff, so he's right in the middle of the legal things that went on in the city, and he's gone back and researched the early days. Just get him to talk about that sort of stuff, because he really knows a lot, and he's willing to talk about it, and he's willing to give you, if you do something and you pass it on to him, say, well, is this any good? He's willing to say, that's right, that's wrong, correct that, whatever.
He's helped me out on a few things.
Yeah,
there.
He's very good that way.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many interesting and capable, experienced people in town. There's never an end.
There are. All you got to do is find them. And some of them are willing to talk, and others aren't, of course.
Yeah.
Others don't want to talk at all. Others are willing to mouth off like I do. So.
Interesting. One of the vehicles that passed that was making noise there with that septic tank there. He was just at my place pumping, emptying out my septic tank.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think his name's Harrison. Jason Harrison. He lives just on the road.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We just about had a visit from a brown thrasher a few minutes ago, which is nice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a long tail, a bright brown, almost not chestnut, sort of long tail, and it's a relative of the mockingbird. And in the spring, it's got the most beautiful call that you've ever heard up here. It blends in about 4 different tunes, and it's just marvelous. And you can understand why it's in the same background as a mockingbird. So you're talking about wildlife, and we've had the chipmunks running around and the squirrels and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, it's great with having the birds and whatnot.
And of course you've got the black flies and the mosquitoes. Can't forget those.
They're part of it.
But they're not here today.
Just one little mosquito. There's one little survivor. Well, at this time of year, the mice come in the house, right? Did you get that?
Yeah.
So I got about 3 I got the last day, and I put them up on my railing and on my deck. And they're offerings for the raven that lives around.
Yes. I put them out for the birds too, or whoever happens to come.
Yeah. For a while there, I had this raven that was visiting. It was kind of cool. But
Raven, they're bigger than the crow.
Yeah.
And they have the funny calls, don't they?
Yeah.
We have them both, but I have a great deal of difficulty when they're flying telling which one is which. But
yeah, the ravens are bigger and bigger beak. And they look a little bit heftier.
But the crows chase them.
Yep. Yeah, because the ravens will come and eat their young and everything else.
Oh,
yeah. They're
Nature's cruel. But
yeah, well, it's at least it's transparent.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Not like us humans.
Yes. Yeah. They don't. Although they trick each other.
They do.
With camouflage and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I guess so.
But
they're tricky.
Not verbally.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're tricky, you're right.
Although I suppose you get some animal can imitate another animal and lure the one animal in, I don't know. Or birds can do that or whatever. Who knows?
I take it back.
That's just... Well, we're the worst. We're the worst without any question. Got a bigger brain pan or whatever.
Yeah, too much time on our hands to be conniving.
A lot of people seem to have that, don't they?
Yeah, apparently.
However.
Did you have anything you wanted to talk about? I'm really enjoying this. Just a nice, cool...
Yeah, it's a lovely day and not no strong breeze or anything else. I don't know.
You're about to leave North Bay?
Yeah, we're going to live with our daughter and son-in-law in Belleville. We had somebody interested in the house and property, and that sort of triggered the whole thing. Pam is very... we haven't talked about Pam. She's had a remarkable life here. She raised 2 kids. Because I was off on I was off doing hockey games or covering a football meeting or game or going down south for a softball meeting, whatever the heck it was. She raised the kids and she did a superb job of it. When we met, she was working at the Nugget, and she went out west and worked in an Indian residential school for a year, and went out to BC, and she came back. And at a mature age, she went to university. She got a degree. Her parents felt, you know, you don't need an education. You be a secretary or something like that. So she left high school early, not because she particularly wanted to. She was they put her into what used to be called a technical school, you know. So when she got the opportunity, she went to university here, graduated with a BA, became the curator of the North Bay Museum, was told by the museum board, we want you to put the museum on the, make people know we've got a museum here, do things, which she did a superb job of it. She always had a project. The Heritage Village was once, the only heritage was in the festival, and she organized all that for a number of different years. She was the curator for something like 14 years. Worked hard for the church for her whole life in an organizational capacity, doing this with the ACW and different committees and so on and so forth. So she's had a very full life here, and she's enjoyed it. But she wants to go and be with her daughter and closer to our son and so on and so forth. So,
well, good for her.
Yeah. And she's a gardener. She's organizing everything. She's a great organizer. I'm not.
So definitely your better half.
Oh yeah, she's got great organizational skills, and do this and do that and set this up here and put this here, and she's great at giving orders. But what wife isn't? You know, what the hell? So.
Well, they need somebody to follow those orders to make it work.
I'm not bad at following orders, but if I get 4 in a row, I can remember the first 2. However, no.
If you were interviewing her, what would you ask her?
What's been most... There's your pileated.
Yep.
I mean, she's been very engrossed in the church, but I know she really enjoyed the museum work. She really enjoyed that, and she did an excellent job of it. Just what she's enjoyed in her life most of all.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's done a lot of work. She's done quite a bit of writing. She did a lot of writing for the church. So she's developed a flair for writing. She's written for your magazine, as a matter of fact.
Yep.
And she's developed a particular style, which is, I say, you know, it's almost a stream of consciousness. The way the sentences run together, it's almost a stream of consciousness.
Edits her stuff.
So, you know, I mean, she's developed into not a bad writer.
It's a good style.
And I think she'd like to have been a minister, but that came a little bit late, and you know.
Oh, she would have been a good minister.
Yes, because she's very generous, very sympathetic. Yeah, those are 2 major features.
And good energy, good positive energy.
Oh yeah. And that's why when she's had to slow down with stenosis and different health problems, slowing down bothers her. It bothers her, but she's got to. You know, you just got to. And she likes to read, and now she's decided, you know, no more fiction. She's just reading fact. I don't want to read the fiction anymore. I'm going to read fact. Non-fiction books. She read a lot of Churchill stuff, and she's reading about the discovery of the Nile and all that sort of stuff. More power to her. Great. I read a lot, but
She has a
Some of it's
voracious appetite.
factual. Most of it's fiction that I read.
Yeah,
So.
she has a voracious appetite for information.
Yes, yes. That's what made her a good curator,
Yeah.
in one respect. You know. So. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I've worked with people who have great memories about what happened. For example, Vince Calichuri, you can ask Vince about a hockey game that occurred 5 years ago, and he can tell you who took the shot and who made the whatever. And I used to do a hockey game, and the day after it was over, I mean, you asked me about the hockey, I would give them a general picture of it, but nothing more than that. The same with interviews. I do interviews, and I concentrate on them so much that you ask me, and when it's over, an hour after it's over, what did you talk about? And I got a difficulty, and I've almost got to sit down and watch a replay to say, oh yeah, okay, all right. I don't know why that is. I think it's because I'm working hard in the moment, and I'm listening to what the guest says. There goes the affiliated. I'm listening to what the guest says, so I can either follow up on it or go somewhere with it or not go somewhere with whatever. That I get the gist of what's, and I remember it at the time. And 10 years later, I could remember something, maybe a little particular thing, but the rest, most of it is just gone.
Well, professional fighters, they don't, when they're in the midst of the heat of the moment, they're not remembering or thinking. It's mostly instinctual.
Yeah, I guess.
But they're processing everything so focused. They have, sometimes when you see their interviews, and I'm not sure if it's because they had their brains knocked out, but they don't remember the sequence like it happened.
Yeah.
Necessarily. They have to go back and look at the tape.
Yeah.
You ask a fighter about their, right after a fight there, what did you think about that second round and when this happened? And they're like, what?
But some guys, some pitchers, I threw this guy a splitter, I threw him a twister, whatever you want to call it, and the batter says, oh yeah, I knew that pitch, the pitcher was setting me up with this, that, outside and inside and round my mother's corner, and I got this pitch and blah, 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 blah. Some people can really remember that sort of stuff.
People, yeah.
And some of them can remember it years later. I mean, there's certain things I can remember years later too, but a lot of stuff I can't. Somebody will trigger, or I swear it happened this way. Like, police will say that an eyewitness, you got 14 eyewitnesses to something, and 12 of them will be different. They're all seeing it from their own perspective, or they're bluffing, or whatever. It's just amazing how things either stick in your mind or they don't. And if they stick in your mind, is what sticks in your mind what really happened. And I've been caught short. I've said something about something, and then I'll go back and check and I say, okay, I was close.
Yeah.
But I wasn't right on. I wasn't spot on. Yet I thought I was spot on that observation and whatever it happened to be. But I guess the brain is just, they're just learning about it now. And
what I find is interesting, because the more and more I go down this road of storytelling and journalism, the less and less I'm confident necessarily that to state categorically something was a certain way.
yeah,
Right?
yes,
Like that idea that
yes,
the absolutism is, I'm no longer an absolutist.
Okay,
Because
good.
I don't think it's everything we see is what it appears, and there's so many different pieces. I'm okay. I'm being humble and not knowing for sure, but I have a certain idea, and I think this.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not. I think people are making a mistake when they think they have the absolute truth.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Because that's a pretty slippery thing to grasp.
And it is. It is. I'll give you an example. I'm purging, and I used to for council. I said I'd work hard, and I did, and I prepared for what I was supposed to present to council. And in the early years, most of the early years, or if I was talking in public, I would script it. Okay, and I remember swearing. I think I talked to the mayor not too long ago about this, about taxes. And it was in the back of my head. Jack Burrows had been the deputy mayor for the 3 years before he became mayor. And he was a budget chief. And he was a 0 budget increase, okay? So he gets to be mayor. And this was my story. I'll swear by it, okay? The first year, out of respect for Jack, the council said, okay, we'll go with a 0 increase. The first year. The second year, we get a slight increase, and the third year was another slight increase, whatever. I looked at one of my speeches. I don't know who to or what, because I had used to have to represent Jack on a number of occasions, as other councillors do, and have since representing the mayor in different circumstances, and you prepare and blah, 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 or either a speech to council or a speech to some group or so on and so forth. And it's in this was written at the time, so the memory was fresh. Okay, we had no tax increases for the first 2 years of our term, and we increased it slightly in the third. So I was wrong. And my belief, we let Jack get away with it 1 year. The second year, Jack, we've got to have a tax increase. It turns out I was wrong. It was the first 2 years, 0. Then when we increased in the third year, and Jack's second, the midterm, which I would consider the valuable term, we had increases. We had to have increases. We had to. Even Jack, who was, he liked $1 and knew the value of $1. Even Jack understood it and didn't fight it. He understood it completely. As anybody who becomes a councillor and works as a councillor will realize, and I mentioned this before, and the taxpayer pays the shot, but if the taxpayer beefs at paying a little bit more of a shot, then your roads aren't going to get done, your lights aren't going to be on, X isn't going to get done, you're going to want Y because we don't have this, we can't attract people to North Bay because we don't have Y, blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on and on and on and on. But it was 2 years. So I stand corrected myself. My goodness. Because Al said, when I did a podcast with him, I said the first year, and he says, I think it was more than that. And Al was right, and I was wrong. But at the time, I didn't follow it up. I didn't argue. Thank God I didn't argue. Because of my own words later on tells me I was wrong.
Well, that's a good lesson, right?
Yeah, a little bit late to get a lesson, but at least if I can learn a lesson at 89, I guess I'm not dead yet.
It's a reminder.
Yes, a reminder.
I get reminded weekly, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny though how that happens is.
You swear you're right.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I have stories I tell, and that was one of them. And I'm wondering now, okay, how do I go back and check? There's no damn way of checking. It's my memory, and I know my Lloyd Robertson story is correct about with Judy LaMarche. I know it's correct because I was there and I remembered it because it's stuck in my mind about the golden rule, and preached that to the kids when I was teaching in Canada, or teaching interviewing in Canada. The golden rule. And ask it in an exam. What's the golden rule? You'd be surprised. The number of kids that didn't know what the golden rule was. And yet, when I grew up, it was a tenet of life. Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself, or whatever, words to that general effect. Things change.
Well, that's why I'm a little bit more humble now.
Okay.
No, I am. Honestly.
That's good.
When I'm talking to people, I definitely treat them more now than ever like I want them to treat me when I'm wrong. If I'm right on something and they're wrong, I try not to be as the big sledgehammer. Too much.
Yeah.
I actually try. I do. I try not to.
Yeah.
Because it does. One thing, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you could be very wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
Humility. Life will teach it to you.
Absolutely.
Have some kids, they'll teach you humility.
Yes.
Your Peter turned out really cool.
Yes.
It looks like, from what I can see, like even when I knew him, just briefly, and he's become a very, excellent professional and a father, like a family man.
Yes.
And that's huge.
Yes, it is. He's graphic, and works for a lot of different organizations. He's designed a number of books, including our 2 Sports Hall of Fame books, but these are big coffee table books. He's done one for the Public Works of Canada, and he's got another one, I think, in the works. He works for himself, does his own business. Isla's our granddaughter, and a going concern into just about everything. She's into gymnastics right now, or rhythmic gymnastics, or cheerleading gymnastics, or something like that.
You must be proud.
So yeah, but it's, you're quite a distance away, and that's a good thing in a respect, because then you don't impose your own stuff on a grandchild. And I know that's fine if you're pushing good stuff onto your grandchild, but how do you know what is good stuff and what isn't good stuff? You don't. You really don't. So
I think grandparents are just best at providing
support
and being a nice person.
Yeah.
Being that nice person for their memories.
Yeah. Mari turned out, she did, as a legal assistant, she had a wonderful career when she eventually decided she was going to do that. And it took time, and we gave her that time. She wanted to quit school early, which she did. She worked for McDonald's, did an excellent job with McDonald's, and could have stayed with McDonald's if she'd wanted to. She wanted to be a legal assistant. She did that, and she married Leo, who was in the forces, and they were all over the country. They were in Comox, they were in Colorado Springs, they were in Kingston, they were in Trenton, they were in all different places. Out, Comox in British Columbia. And every place she went, she had the skills to get a job, because nothing worse than just sitting around the house. And the military pay is reasonable, but it's not exorbitant. So she was able to do a job successfully, and her last job, she was basically treated as a lawyer, even though she wasn't. She was the company's lawyer in many respects. And so, yeah, she got a head on her shoulders too, which is great.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
She's lived a good life. Saw a lot of things.
Yeah. It developed diabetes late, and I personally think it was the stress on the last job, because it was really stressful. And that's one thing I understand that can cause, because we don't have any of it in the family that I know of. So anyway, no, both kids have turned out very, very well. We're very, very happy for them, and they've had successful, good lives, and that's all you can hope for, you know.